I'm alone all day today. Wife is out doing things. Nirmal is unavailable, so I am solo. And my plan is to spend a lot of the time working on the GitHub Action course and answering your questions about GitHub Actions. AI and our CI, I guess is what I'm calling it. So let's get to it. Glad you're here. If you didn't know, this show sometimes, not always, sometimes turns into a podcast, one of a couple of podcasts. We have a lot of podcasts now. I feel like we've got too much going on. We've got DevOps and Docker Talk, my 7-year running podcast. Get that at podcast.bretfisher.com. We've got the new Agentic DevOps podcast. Maybe I should put links. That's like the default podcast, and then when there's a very specific type of episode, we put it on Agentic DevOps, and that's what I'm making courses about lately. This is the course that I'm making right now. If you want to sign up on the wait list, you'll get updates. An update's coming soon, actually, because we're in production. We're recording videos. And we've got some news about how we're going to split this course up into separate courses. It's actually going to turn into a bunch of courses. They're going to be just smaller than before, and they're going to be more focused. Instead of one giant course that you have to wait 6 months for me to finish, we're going to make smaller courses. And we also have the newsletter, Bret.news. Oh my goodness. So many different things here. So we get the newsletter you can sign up for, which tries to keep you up to date on everything we're creating, although I have to admit, things get behind and fall off there. You can see there's only 2 newsletters in August. So another one will probably go out here in a day or two because we've got a lot of backlog to get through of things we've released and things we've done. We have a Discord server. You can see right above me. You can join the Discord server. That's, 30,000 people in there, something like that. I swear it's more real people than bots, but some days I just don't know. Discord has become a cesspool of nothing but scammers and bots, and we got everything locked down. We got everything turned up. I've got bots checking for spam-like behavior, and it's just not enough. This is why we can't have nice things on the internet, is because people want to ruin it with their agenda. Meanwhile, I'm here with my agenda, which is to make courses so that I can keep doing this. Because it turns out memberships, which like and subscribe, YouTube membership, it gets you into a lot of things. You get access to special channels in Discord. If you didn't know, you can sign up on Patreon. You can sign up here. You can sign up on my website. That's something we've been doing for like 6 years. And you can sign up there. We've had anywhere between 100 people and 300 people all being members. I don't know where we're at right now, but those people all get access to a monthly hangout we call the High Fivers. If you're on that plan, I think we're going to rename that. And then you get special Discord channels, and then you get special emoji stickers and stuff like that. And then you just get to support this work that I do full time. And I try to make most of it free. And then we sell courses to try to pay the bills. And sometimes I'm successful at that. Sometimes I'm not. What's up in chat? Alex was here first. Shatiswaran. Sorry if I totally mispronounced that name. I'm glad you're here. Martin is here as usual. Alex, do you plan on keep on using Arc even though it's no longer actively developed? That's a great question, and one that every week I think about. So I'm technically running both Arc and Dia, their new browser. It's, there's Dia's nice. It's got that built-in chat. I kind of wish I could control my own models and basically make it so that I don't have to pay for it. Dia's now, I think, got a subscription service if you use too much of the chat. Okay, so here's my thing. Here's my thing on Arc. I've loved Arc for years now, at least I think two and a half years. It makes you question, why do you like a piece of software? Okay, so it's like a human phenomenon we have, right? If you have the latest laptop, the latest Lenovo or the latest MacBook, and then a new one comes out, you get excited about the new one in a week. At least I do. I get excited about something new that's a refreshed version of what I have in a weird way, because often the thing I have is perfectly fine, but I still want the new thing. And in fact, my mind goes crazy coming up with reasons to get the new thing, get the updated version. And with Arc, they're still fixing major bugs. I mean, some of them, they just fixed a bug this week with full screen video. They still update with Chromium every week, so it's getting Chromium features and updates, but they're not adding major new features to it, and they haven't for, 8 months. So one has to ask, why did you like the browser to begin with? And that's the thing I've been asking myself. I like it because of the existing features, not because of what I thought was coming. So until Dia has all the these advanced features that I use every day, including the spaces, which I use heavily. I actually still kind of use the easels and I use folders, and I use spaces extensively. You can see like all of these crazy spaces I have with all my different bookmarks. I mean, that's basically project management in browser tabs. And I don't want them to go away. I want them to be available on mobile. And Arc has that. Arc is still my default browser on my phone. Arc is still the default browser on my Mac. I have Dia in the background, and I also have all the other browsers because, like a lot of developers, I'm just obsessed with browsers. To me, I'm not quitting Arc until there is something with way more features. And I've got all the other ones on here. I'm actually losing track of all the different browsers. Because there's a couple of clone Arc browsers out now, and Alex, you may remember the other ones. I don't actually. I know one of them is built on Firefox, and I can't even think the name of it, and it's not in my browser, it's not in my app bar, and I can't remember the name of it when I installed it. But it was like Arc without any of the AI features, and it had some of the basic functions, but it wasn't the fit and finish, the polish wasn't there. Zen browser, there you go. Yep. So I have Zen. Not to be confused with Zed, the IDE. But like I've got this over here. This is the Zen browser, and if I kind of put it. I did this to make it look the same size, and then I went back to Arc. I mean, they're strikingly similar. To me, Zen just took all the best features of Arc and made its own Firefox browser. So, Arc was great. It didn't become less great because it wasn't getting rapid new features. I loved it because of the features it had. So they didn't tell us about what was coming. So we never had anticipation about, oh man, it's going to be so much better when this happens. So I had to question, why am I going to force myself? Because I've seen other streamers rage quit it and get upset with Arc, the browser company. I mean, first off, we owe them nothing. It's free software. That's what happens. Being someone who works in software, it's like I can only get so frustrated with a company when they have a valid argument for why they can't monetize. And this is also like a valid argument for why sometimes Silicon Valley ruins software, because they took a bunch of money and now they've got to figure out a way to make that money back. And, a $5 a month charge for a browser isn't going to make you all that money back. It would if you hadn't taken any money to begin with, but then it would have been a hobby, or you would have been, burning down your savings account. So I'm conflicted. I'm sorry that they had to do this because I'm sure they still love Arc. The fact that they're updating it and maintaining it with patches, at least to keep it. To me, it's like on the shelf with Swarm, because Swarm gets CVE updates, security patches. And it does on occasion, a couple times, once a year, once every other year, it does get a new feature or two. And Arc is the same way, like with Swarm. It's fine. It's safe. I feel safe using it. I wouldn't use it if I didn't feel like it was getting latest Chromiums and it was vulnerable to the latest browser CVEs. So the minute they stop doing that, yeah, I'm done, and I'm probably going to Zen plus trying Dia. I like Dia now has a side. If I bring up my Dia, which it remembers tabs, which is good. At least it does that. Doesn't look like it's going to show up. There we go. Yeah, so Dia looks a lot like Chrome, but it has a built-in ChatGPT-like experience. Somehow it controls the browser, can open up new tabs. I feel like this browser wasn't built for me. I feel like the Dia browser was not built for browser pros. And that is my number one gripe with it, is that the sidebar is very basic. It's actually, I think, even worse than Safari's sidebar. I don't believe I can create folders here. I can't organize. I don't have spaces. I can't do anything. It's just a sidebar. It doesn't let me push tabs here from mobile. I can't sync them to mobile. Like, there's just 1,000 things that it doesn't do. So I've been trying it, but honestly, I'm kind of done trying it unless they have major features. I've just realized it's not for me. There's nothing in here that's compelling. I have ChatGPT desktop, so I have a 2-key stroke that I'm immediately accessible to a high-end full AI experience. I don't find the ability for my AI to open tabs particularly compelling. I do like the summary of pages, but I'm also, as much as I'm making a course on AI, but I also am not crazy about AI. Like, I still think our current AI, it's too cheerful, it's too positive, it doesn't know when to quit, it still hallucinates too much, and for reliable use. So yeah. It's a crappy place I feel like we're all in right now. We're all hooked on this thing called AI, but man, it's so far from perfect. And watching it, limp along to some form of something in the future that'll be truly useful is frustrating. And I'm someone who's like, I'm using Warp. I'm over here using the Warp with its wonderful built-in AI, and it is not perfect. The planning could be better. But the planning features at least could be better. But I think for now, at least as a 1.0 terminal AI, it's pretty great. All my friends use Claude Desktop or Cursor. I've found that VS Code was more or less the same now as Cursor. They have 99% of the same functionality as far as I can tell. And I have paid, I pay for GitHub. So I'd rather not pay for multiple IDEs and AIs. And I already pay for ChatGPT, Anthropic, and I just pay for so much stuff, and I don't want to pay for more of the same. So my choices right now, not that you asked, are Warp first. I'm a Warp terminal everything. I use that for development over Claude Desktop. I actually think it's comparable to Claude Desktop. And I do kind of want to compare at some point Claude Desktop to Warp and have both of them use container use or use containers. Because I do want to let my AI do more YOLO, basically build more things without me having to click approve every time. But I'm really not comfortable in doing that unless it's in a container, because I've had multiple times now where the AI was ready to delete system directories or do nefarious stuff on my computer because it gets so confused and it goes down a rabbit hole where it can't build its own software, so it assumes other things are broken. So I need to be able to do that in a container where it can do whatever it wants and nuke the whole container, and I don't care, right? So there's that. So I guess if I if I had to have, I mean, I don't even know what an AI browser is supposed to be really. Okay, cute. It can summarize pages and it can open tabs. That's not enough compelling use cases for me to use a browser-based AI, in my opinion, over a desktop AI, over my Warp AI. I mean, I can sit down here in my Warp AI and just, you know, what's the best 80s movies top 5? Right. So a lot of times nowadays, I'm not necessarily jumping over to ChatGPT. I'm just kind of doing it all in Warp since I'm already there developing. It doesn't have history in terms of like I can go back to conversations, but my understanding is the minute I close the tab, I am losing. I don't know that I can get that history back of that tab in terms of the context. I could be wrong. There's an amazing number of features in Warp that I'm still not using yet. So anyway, I've got so many different AIs and IDEs and now I'm also a Notion fan, which we're going to talk. We're going to talk about Notion. I'm over here. Oh, why is that so? Why does it do that? Why does it do that? Maybe if I close Notion and restart it. Notion, I pay for Notion AI, and Notion AI has gotten so much better because it can now. Oh wow! It didn't even. It's now worse. I have no idea what it's. Why does it get smaller when I move it around my screen? I have no idea. But Notion AI now can search through AI. It can search my Gmail, my GDocs, my Notion, my Slack. And so it's become a really good place for me to find information, and it does more in that sense. It does more for me in my business and my data, which I've been putting everything in Notion for 6 or 7 years. So a browser with history and memory, I don't know. I'm just not convinced. What's up, Ravi? So Alex, I don't know. I'm sure that answered your question. That was a long question a while ago on keeping Arc. But yeah, honestly, as long as they keep updating it until Dia becomes some sort of different browser, and I'm convinced that they're not going to make it the browser we want, that they're not going to add all the Arc features to Dia. I don't know why I'm convinced of that, but it doesn't seem like they're heading that direction. And if their argument for not keeping Arc was certain things around advanced browser users, I'm just not convinced that they're ever going to make an advanced browser like Arc. And that Arc, I mean, maybe in some future world, maybe if Dia gets, has success, maybe they keep both browsers, but it just doesn't make sense to me. Why would they keep both? But as long as they keep updating Arc, I'll keep using it. When they ditch Arc, I'll probably go to Zen. Because by then it'll hopefully have added some more functionality and it'll do. I do want a Chromium browser, not a Firefox-based browser as my primary. I don't mind if Firefox is a backup, but so yeah, I'm pretty conflicted too. What do you think? What are your browsers? If you're watching, enough about me. Tell me what your browsers are. What your prime? Do you have two? I typically like to have two, only because I typically have my main one, and then sometimes I just want another app on Mac that's not the same window of the same app. It's a Mac thing, but I tend to want to do specific things, like maybe I'm on this one taking notes, and on this one I'm browsing, and I'm using Notion inside a browser on this other one, and I like to Command Tab in Mac, and that works great for different apps, but not different windows in an app. And so it's just a subtle little thing on Mac that causes me to always have at least two browsers. It used to be, up until a couple of years ago, it was Chrome and Safari. So I'd have Chrome as my primary and Safari as like my note-taking, or maybe I'm using one to surf the web and another one where I have Inspector open and I'm playing around with the HTML or whatever. So that's typically how I approach it. WaterFox. Ooh, I don't think I've ever heard of WaterFox. Yeah, okay, so Arc, Zen, WaterFox. How do you not get Arc and Zen confused? I mean, I guess maybe if you did different colors, or if you look for I think on Zen, all these apps are looking so similar to each other, it's like hard to tell them apart. I guess on Zen you do have this one little tell where you have the extensions up here at the top that you don't have in Arc. But man, I mean, look at that. I don't think I maybe knew that there was spaces. Look at that. See, I mean, it looks so similar. You would think you were in Arc. So yeah, that's pretty great. I don't know who's funding Zen. I don't quite understand, because if it's a hobby browser, I mean, browsers need a lot of updates and need a lot of love, and they're constantly evolving, and they're a thankless job. So it's hard for me to get fully behind and fully committed to a browser that's completely open source, that's not backed by a big nonprofit like Mozilla, where they can have full-time engineers patching security vulnerabilities. Security is the thing that I'm most worried about, because browsers are just, especially Chromium-based, where there's C++ code in there. It's a constant cat and mouse game. So I'm always concerned. I don't actually know. I mean, I don't know the history of Zen, the company. Now that I've got all these browsers open, I don't even know which one I should be using. About Us. Zen team. Okay, so you can donate. My experience is that is not going to fund, at best, if they were very popular, they could maybe fund one person's salary. But that's, I would think, would be at best. Based on the history of open source funding in crowd formation, crowdsourcing is not. Yeah, so like if all these people were giving $3 or $5, or those are contributors, those aren't sponsors. Let's go see what's going on. All right, 1,263 members. So 650. See, I think members means they're paying. I think that's how Patreon works. Even though I can join for free, I don't think they can become a member. So that's getting up to a salary of a person. Yeah, maybe $8 a month. That's one or two people, maybe full time. That's pretty cool. Actually, that's pretty impressive for a relatively new project. But over time, a lot of these project members will get busy. Life happens, and we all need to know that this thing is being loved and cared for. So I wish them the best, but I'm nervous and skeptical about committing to it without like Mozilla taking it on. I wish. Wouldn't it be awesome if Mozilla just said, okay, we're going to fund this browser too, because it seems to be getting a lot of support lately or something. Ravi uses Brave and Chrome. All right. I never, back when Brave was young, I was believing in the future of Brave. And I'm actually still surprised by how many people use it. But it never clicked for me. I loved the whole pay for content approach, being a content creator. But it didn't ever, as far as I know, it never really impacted the web in the way that I think that they wanted to impact it. Zen does not have folders yet. Yeah, I gotta have the folders. I'm hooked on the folders. I mean, otherwise I'm gonna have like triple the spaces or quadruple the spaces. Yeah, exactly, Alex. I like having tabs in a folder in a space, very much the same way. I mean, if you just look at my insanity, I'm not even sure it's healthy. I'm also one of those people that I was one of the last people to give up on bookmarks. I don't know why. I think what it is for me, bookmarks helps me establish. It helps me autocomplete faster. You know, like when the search bar, when you're typing in something in it you already have that as a bookmark, it tends to complete faster. And second, kind of like the purple in Google search, it lets me know that I've been there before. Because when you've surfed hundreds of websites every day, you tend to forget things you looked at or projects you were checking out. And so it's nice. That's kind of like why I star GitHub projects. I star them when I've looked at them, not that I use them, but when I've looked at them, and I want to remember that I've looked at this project. So it's an indicator that I've been here before. Remember back on Twitter when we used to heart them as a red indicator? Like, I've read this, I've read this, I've read this. Anyway, that was early days Twitter, but I'm one of those old people. So yeah, I've got, like, this is the course stuff, and I've got folders inside folders inside folders. If I go to like my AI stuff, I've got folders inside of folders. And honestly, the majority of this, like the stuff at the top, I can't even remember what, let's see, let me go down here. What do you call it when I think it's like, yeah, pinned. So all my pinned pages, the majority of my pinned work is to help me with context when I want to start working on something. So I've got this project called Release Pod, and when I want to start working back on that, I kind of come in here and see where I was in a lot of these pinned websites. So that helps my brain sort of get back to the mode of flowing on that project. Things that show up in the non-start area at the bottom, those are like my to-dos of go watch that, go listen to that. I've also started, because of I think part of me anticipates that Arc won't always be updated. So I also use, I've actually bought Reader and Readwise. So I have that whole app, which is also a website, but I have the app installed for tracking all the things I want to read and want to watch, even books or PDFs that I have that I want to make sure I don't forget about. I have way more in here than I ever get to, so I'm very optimistic about how much time I spend learning. But I'm constantly dumping stuff in here, and I've been wanting to change my habits so that when I'm in here and I'm like, and I have, so this video right here, I don't even know what this video is. Okay, so this is a friend, Brian. He makes something called Agent OS, which is a new, project. No. Where is his? There we go. I don't even know why is the what is the URL? I think it's on his website. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, it's on. Okay, maybe it was the top one. Builder Methods is his website. So I mentioned this a couple weeks ago. This is his like a side project of his, open source, for planning and spec work inside of an AI, and I think he's making it Claude Code first. So I'm going to try to adopt this, actually. I'll put this in chat. But anyway, so I wanted to watch this video from Brian. So I can add that to Reader, and then I can see in my library. Do I even have it in here? See, yeah, see, it's not in here. So there's a little reader plugin to the browser, and then AI. So, and then it'll show up in my Readwise. Yeah. So it's weird to watch YouTube videos. Like, I don't think about going to an app to find the YouTube videos I want to watch because I'm so used to the algorithm on YouTube. But Readwise has been great, and I love all of its advanced features. It very much tickles my the librarian in me that wants to track and document and organize and Dewey Decimal everything. So I love read. I used to do Pocket. I don't know if you ever had Pocket, but Pocket from Mozilla, but they killed off Pocket, and so when that happened, I had to move to Readwise. And so far, I'm kind of loving it. I love that it integrates both the feed of what I'm interested in, as well as social accounts that I want to follow, or any news websites and all their news. And then I can decide which of that I want to actually read, and then I can shoot that over to my library where I go and find the things I want to read. So I'm still trying to figure out my workflow for that, but that's kind of I think that's going to be the replacement for me storing all these different tabs. Because if you go to just like all these tabs down here, all things I want to watch or read, and all these are things I want to watch or read, but they're per space, so they're per topic or per project, and it's just way too much. I mean, obviously, there's just way too much. I would never read all this. It's a pipe dream for me to think I'm going to read all that. Yeah, I miss Pocket. Punch cards were just fine. Punch cards were fine, but I didn't carry them with me. That's the problem. My phone's always in my pocket, and the Reader app is pretty great. So I think it has Read to Me. Like, it has all the things I would ever want in tracking all my news and whatnot. I haven't actually tried paywalled stuff like New York Times. I probably could just click on it and it would take me to the New York Times app. I haven't actually tried that yet, but this is all really an attempt for me to try to stop the algorithm from forcing me to read whatever is latest, and me to have intention in what I want to read and to control my own thread of reading, because we all get stuck in rabbit holes, going down rabbit holes. And I think that the algorithm causes me to go down more rabbit holes than anything, which can be fun and sometimes are very cool and useful rabbit holes. But what ends up happening is that I sacrifice the intention of learning the things I want to learn for the algorithm, and I hate that. I hate that about the algorithm. I wish I could have a universal setting on my phone that would just say, today, no algorithms. Like, if it's not something that I'm already in the middle of watching, or if I haven't finished watching it, don't show me any new stuff. I want to be intentional about, just show me an empty screen and I will search. Or show me the things that I haven't finished watching or that I've already said I wanted to watch, which are, YouTube has that, but it's not front and center anymore. So this is the year of me being more intentional about my reading. I'm actually in the middle of a couple of books. Not that you asked, but I will recommend you a couple of books. And yes, Anton, what's up? You can ask any Docker questions at any time, always. Anything DevOps and tech, you can ask me. That's why we're hanging out, so we can chat. It just so happens that the only way you can chat back is through the lame text interface. So shoot away. All right, books I'm in the middle of. Derek Sievers has a book called Useful Not True, and I'm in the middle of that. It's his new book. I like Derek's books. He's had several that I've skimmed, and I actually want to buy all of them because I liked his writing. It's short. It doesn't go on and belabor on the point. They're all sort of self-help books. I forgot how to spell his name. Yeah, so he has a website, and books, Useful Not True is the new one. A lot of people have read his short blog post that turned into an entire book called Hell Yeah or No. Hell Yeah or No is kind of like a principle that I believe. Like I run my little company based on that book. Hell yeah or no. If we're making revenue and we're doing okay, then the new projects have to be hell yeah, or I'm saying no. Like a meh project, it may even pay money. I don't want to do it. I don't have time to do it. I need to save space for the things that get me really excited. Otherwise, I might as well go get a real job. So Hell Yeah or No is a fantastic book. And I just kind of want to have all these on my shelf. So I need to buy the set. Anyway, so I'm in the middle of that book called Useful Not True. Useful Not True. How do I describe that book? It is a book that tries to get you to open up your mind to the idea that a lot of the things that we consider true are not actually true. They're just beliefs. And there's certain things I believe about myself, that I believe about the world, and that I believe about other people, good or bad. And a lot of times I might get confused to think that those are somehow facts and that they're somehow true, when in reality, it's really just a belief that I've had multiple indicators or things that affirm that belief, and it's propped it up to the point that I now think of it as a truth. And so the book really kind of tries to define the difference between truth and beliefs, and basically debunking a lot of things, or a lot of the ways that we get to think that things are true. And my wife was like, "Why are you reading that book? That book sounds like it's trying to open you up to misinformation." And I was like, "No, actually, it's trying to do the opposite. It's trying to help me understand that a lot of information I get is really just a set of facts that turn into, and they may be facts, they may not, but they're a set of facts and they turn into a belief, but that doesn't make the belief true." And the purpose of it is to try to get me to realize that there is more possibility. It's not really about fake news or anything about populist or the popular topics in the echo chamber of the news. It's more about trying to get me to realize that there's a lot more possibilities than I might realize, and that fences or guardrails or limits that I've self-imposed because they are things that I somehow believe are true when they're really just beliefs, that I maybe could reconsider those beliefs and possibly open up new business opportunities or new things in life, things that I didn't think were possible that I could do. So I'm about halfway through, I think. And so far, it's a pretty good book. I think it's a pretty good mind exercise. Like, yeah, he says, our brains lie to their owners. Nobody knows the real reasons why they do anything. When someone says, I believe, then whatever they say next is not a fact. No beliefs are necessarily true. Beliefs are perspectives. Explanations are confabulated. Obligations are wishes. Rules are arbitrary. They're useful, but not necessarily true. Knowing this gives you empathy as you understand people's incentives behind their beliefs. And I'd probably have to read this book 2 or 3 times, but I think it does have the potential to have the intended effect on me to increase empathy about others by understanding that the way they act and the things that they say are based on beliefs that were created over time, and that just because they have different incentives than me, they are likely to believe different things than me, and that doesn't make them evil. So it's actually it's a mind-opening book. It's a different one than I normally would read. So it was actually given to me because of my reader subscription. I think one of the ways that I think the way I got it was that when you pay for Readwise, you get his new book for free, which, thank you. I really appreciate that. That was a really great book. The other one I'm reading, let's see, which I've talked about many times on the show, and I'm almost done with, but I keep going back to rereading chapters and making notes, is Rick Rubin's book. The creative act. And this one is really about me trying to get my headspace in a place where I can create courses and that I can get into that creative process in order to create new stories to tell. I like to tell stories. I like my courses to not just be a manual. I would rather them be a story with a beginning and an end, and we are doing things, and we create a fictional narrative around a company we're building or whatever, and we do project-based stuff. That's how I like to create courses. So I wanted to read this book, and it's been way better than I thought it would. I mean, I was afraid it was going to be a little bit frou-frou and artsy-fartsy, and it's not, actually. It's got some of that, but about halfway through, it starts to get very practical, and I've taken lots of notes from this book. I've dog-eared lots of pages. So yeah, the creative act. That's another one that I'm in the middle of. So, all right, what questions we got? What's up, Kumar? Are there some DevOps Gen AI initiatives that can be practically applied to SDLC? There's tons of them. I need a more specific question. So you've got everything from I misspelled that, but right, you've got this. So GitHub is tracking. This is going to be a part of my next GitHub Actions course. So GitHub is essentially trying to coin the term continuous AI. And I will put this in chat because this is kind of an overview and where you should start your focus. It's not a product. It is GitHub trying to define a set of common use cases for applying AI into dev practices. So if you think of it, we have CI, CD, and now they're trying to coin a third one, CAI. So we have continuous integration, we have continuous deployment, now continuous AI. And so they talk about what it is, and then they talk about some of the examples of that. And I think some of the ones we've seen that are the most popular, the continuous code improvement, and then continuous summarization and continuous fault analysis. So fault analysis, summarization, maybe triage would be number 4. Maybe documentation. I haven't seen that as much. Team motivation and accessibility are probably down at the bottom in terms of popularity. But these are all trends, largely fed by GitHub Actions, because that's where automation flows, right? So this isn't continuous AI isn't about you writing code in your local machine with an LLM. This is about things that we set up inside of our automation platforms, right next to CI and CD, to help automate some of the tasking that's outside of development. So, like continuous code improvement, while that is technically a development task, if you set up an AI that every day it automatically reviews PRs and get whatever state they're in, and then it gives recommended tips for improvement inside a comment, that might be considered continuous code improvement because it's something that's automated and that's happening in the background while you're doing your work. And so an AI is continually looking at code, whatever state it's in, and making suggestions that may be obvious or not. And that's just one example. But if you go start looking through the GitHub Actions list, and they now have an AI category, you will find AI related to all sorts of different things that we either in the past have done manually or we've done automated, but with maybe more of a rules-based approach rather than just throwing an LLM at it. We would have set up a set of rules, like, for example, the triage part, continuous triage, label, summarize, and respond to issues using natural language. So we're starting to see a lot of that show up in various repos around GitHub Actions where bots are automatic. You know, and a lot of this stuff we actually had before, but it was way less flexible. So even before, we would have a GitHub action that I've taught is it will take a template repo you might have, and organizations now have some of these features built into the GitHub orgs. But before that, we would have bots that would sit in you would have a sample repo that had all the labels that you would potentially apply to PRs and issues. And it would replicate those labels on all the other repos in the org. So if you wanted to make a new won't fix label or a new need to hold for third quarter or whatever that might be, you would probably in the past have set up a rules-based workflow that would look for things, and then it would try to reapply those labels to every repo, right? And so if you added a new label to the template repo, it would then essentially look like it would replicate that setting out, but it would really just be in the background, a rules-based action that would find all the labels and then try to reapply them to the other ones, or it would compare maybe in diff and only create the ones that were different. And there's multiple GitHub actions out there to do that. It's just strictly for labels management. That's a single action just to do that. And I know teams that implement that because if they've got hundreds of repos, no one wants to keep, it sucks when there's 3 different repos and they might even have the same label, but the label's different colors in different ones because different people created them manually and they're not consistent. So that's very annoying when you're going back and forth between pull requests and issues in various repos. So you kind of want it all to be consistent. They now have org features to help with that, but that in of itself is like an entire category of AI stuff. To, the stale issues, which we've seen plenty of rules-based bots before, but we might be able to throw an LLM in there and it might be able to handle edge cases better, or it might be able to do more of the work than the rules-based approach. So anyway, this is a pretty good starter. And then they point at, there's some really popular stuff out there. You can go look at it. Here's some links. And they're basically just saying, we're watching this space and we don't have a specific prescription for people. We just want you to know that this is all happening. These are the trends we're seeing, and that someday we hopefully all use the word CAI. So you can imagine we all just throw out this acronym CI/CD. Imagine if we now have to say CI/CD CAI. That acronym gets longer and it implies that you have CI and that you have automated deployments in CD, and then you've also now thrown in AI to do a whole lot of that work in the middle. And so I think they're just trying to define the term to get ahead of the game so that we all have something to call this later. So for me, since I'm making courses, I'm probably going to make a whole course just on this. I feel like this is big enough that it could be hours worth of examples and conversation around what this topic is and isn't. So you get started in GitHub with the most basic action that is an official AI inference action. I'll put this in chat. But the AI inference one is an official GitHub action. And all it does is it brings in an AI into your CI so that you can do whatever you want with it. It's very generic. It's very basic. But you can put the prompt in via text, or you can have a file that you can inject with the prompt, and then you can get the output and decide what you want to do with that. So this is like super bare bones, which is true of a lot of the official GitHub actions. They tend to be samples and bare bones stuff that we start with, and then we go from there. But the reason that this exists is because we have GitHub models. And if you don't know about GitHub models, you should just go to github.com/marketplace/models. And you get this interface where, let's see if I could do this. No, it centers it. You get this interface where you can choose a model. And if you have GitHub Copilot, you get certain access to the models in GitHub, which they have a lot of models, not just Microsoft's. They have, in this list, they have all of them except Anthropic. In the Copilot app, they also have Anthropic. So if you just look through here, I don't know why I would choose a lot of these, but I think the point of them putting all this in here, and if you read through their documentation, you can also access this in the repo. You can access this in Copilot. You can access this from the CLI, from the GH CLI, and you can access it from the API. All these different models, dozens of models across different companies. And the main reason they're doing this is because GitHub sees this as a playground for you, not for production necessarily, but a playground for you understanding different models, their differences. How would your app perform with a certain model? How would it compare to this other model? If you have made AI-based apps or apps with AI functionality in them. So they're building out these interfaces to help you evaluate and play around without needing to go find some third-party tool that has access to a lot of the different ones. So you can sit here, and this is just one of like a dozen places you can access models inside of the GitHub universe. So I can say, okay, GPT-5's over here. I'm going to use this model and I can type a prompt, but I can also compare. Let's say I compare it to 4.0. So now I get this interface where I can prompt, use the Docker API to run a container. So you'll notice how it's filling it out in both of these chats. So give me a one-line bash script to use the Docker API to run a container. We'll see what it gets. I'll give you this URL. You can go check this out. You are most welcome. Let me see if I missed any of the chat. Anton's got a question. What could you please explain what runtime parameter stands for in a Docker world and how does it work under the hood? I often come across it when in AI projects, for example, runtime NVIDIA. I'm not sure I understand the question, Anton. Do you have some Docker documentation that you're asking about? A runtime parameter. Are you talking about the Docker daemon? Like the Docker daemon options at the command line for Docker D? Not really sure what that question's about. And ChatGPT aired out. So yeah, let me just ask it your question. Let me just ask a question and see if it gives me tips. A runtime is in Docker is the component responsible for managing the lifecycle of the container. So is this like run C? Okay, by default, Docker uses run C. Okay, so you're asking about run C replacements. I believe, at least that's what I think you're asking about. So run C, if you didn't know, you've got Docker. Docker the CLI talks to Docker D the engine. Docker D runs in the background as a service on Linux. It also can run on Windows servers. But on Linux, Docker-D is a wrapper, essentially, not a shell, sorry, but it's a wrapper around Container-D. And Container-D is a lower level container runtime feature and functionality. But Container-D doesn't actually launch the container itself. That is runc, a separate binary, and they're all separate projects. So when you install Docker, the bare minimum you need is 4 things. Runc, the lowest level, most simplest component. Runc doesn't understand a lot, like runc doesn't know about volumes or networks or, I don't even think runc knows how to download an image. That's a lot of that's the responsibility of Container-D. But Container-D, I don't believe, actually creates Docker networks or Docker secrets. Container-D doesn't know about Swarm or volume drivers. I could be wrong on the volume drivers. It probably has its own. And then Docker wraps that Container-D with even easier functionality and gives you an API so that the Docker CLI can talk to it. The Container-D has its own CLI, but it's much more bare bones. It requires a little more detail when you're writing the commands, and it doesn't have all the niceties that Docker and Docker-D does. So runc is by default, the way that every container is run. So, and I don't ever, like the runtime NVIDIA over here, the example it's giving, I don't ever have to do that because I don't have a Windows machine. I don't have a GPU machine. I have a Mac. So on Macs, I don't know that there's a runtime that actually works against the Mac GPUs. So I have very little experience with that. But I don't know that there's anything other than NVIDIA. So yeah, so like what you're talking about is right here. Oh, this is so annoying. Version 3.8. That's so wrong. It's so wrong. It doesn't belong there. Yeah, so the runtime, NVIDIA. So I've literally never had to type that in a compose file because I don't have a NVIDIA GPU, nor do I have one on any of the machines that I own. Oh, look at that. You can actually run gvisor and kata. Okay. I thought those were only available in Container-D. That's pretty cool. So yeah, ChatGPT is going to know more than I do, Anton, as you can see. Yeah, and I think because runc is so universal, it's used in Kubernetes because Kubernetes uses Container-D, Container-D uses runc. So, and there's also crun, which is basically does exactly the same thing runc does, more or less. That's managed by Red Hat, I believe. But I can see why those tools would not want to add a bunch of NVIDIA-specific functionality to add complexity to runc. And for the 99% of use cases that don't need GPUs. So my assumption is that there's a split runtime scenario where you can start the container, and because it's not like a VM, right? Like a container is just created by a series of Linux kernel features, C groups, namespaces. These are just low-level concepts in the kernel, which all have their own utilities that you can use to manage them and create them. And runc talks to the kernel directly and uses all that functionality to spin up a ch-rooted area where there's no files, and then it uses the file system storage driver, to bind mount essentially, or to mount your image and add all those layers up. So that's what runc is doing in the background. So I can imagine, this is a guess, but I can imagine the NVIDIA one will need to talk to the kernel and specifically to NVIDIA drivers that are running on the host OS And runc can't do that because it's agnostic. It doesn't care about GPUs. So that's a guess. That's all a guess. I would trust ChatGPT more than me right now. So good question. Way to stump me. Yeah, and I just don't run a lot of, like, if I'm going to run anything GPU related, it's going to be an LLM, and it's going to be through Docker Desktop or LM Studio or Olama or something like that. So I don't really have any use cases for putting in the NVIDIA runtime. I also see like a lot of examples, by the way, where oh, look at this. It says modern best practices. This is GPT-5. Since Docker 19, which is very old, 6 years old, you don't usually need to set runtime NVIDIA explicitly. Install the NVIDIA Container Toolkit and use Docker run -- GPUs. Because I was about to say, so this is not something that I knew, but I was about to say all the examples I've seen for years have not had to change a runtime parameter. It's always just been -- GPUs. So there you go. Maybe you can ignore it and just do that. All right. What else? Keith, I read your comment. Good comment. All right, so if you didn't know that this model thing existed, that was the point. That was the point of this whole thing. And that continuous AI is this framework. So let's talk about courses for a minute. I'm not going to need that anymore. I don't need that anymore. Don't need that anymore. Yay, Electron apps. They don't work with my streaming software very well. All right, so news on my courses. So if you have heard, I'm launching a GitHub course, but that's now turned into a series of GitHub courses. And I'm working on the first one, which is really going to be, I'm just going to call it for now GitHub Actions Pro. And this is going to be basically everything that a serious DevOps engineer that manages GitHub Actions needs to know. And eventually it will be for people wanting to go for GitHub Actions certification, which is a thing. GitHub provides a Actions certification. And so there will have to be some things that I maybe don't do on my daily basis that I'm going to have to add to this course to make it ready for you to study for the certification. But that's not going to be its goal out of the gate. So this is going to be the first course that I'm finishing. And I'm currently in the middle of the getting started section. We've got videos in various states there. And a lot of this, I've got content already written. In fact, like the reusable stuffs here, I kind of have, this is all pre-production because I've already got a lot of this written. Yeah, workflow inputs. So this is kind of my syllabus, and we're going to focus on this course. So you will see this one. You'll see a lot more news about this one. This actually not this month because it's the end of the month, but in September. And my hope is we can launch it in September or October. And then what's going to happen is that course is going to take a break. And I'm going to stop adding stuff to that course. And I realized originally that all 4 of these were one big course. This was my vision, was that all 4 of these topics were going to be in one giant course. And then I realized that that was going to take forever, and that 6 months from now, all this will have changed. And by the time I've released the course, the AI stuff will need updating. So I broke it into at least 4 courses. And the third and fourth courses are sort of very niche topics. The third one is going to be all about running your own GitHub Action runners because there's lots of ways to do it. And You can create them manually. You can use the K8's ARC, the Action Runner Controller. You can outsource it to use Depot or Docker Build Cloud. You can technically run stuff locally with Arc, which I don't know why I have that listed in here. You could use Dagger inside of your CI. It would still run runners, but then you would have the advantages of Dagger. And then there's also a Terraform autoscale. AWS, by the way, now officially supports, you can build runners on AWS without having to manage a bunch of other projects. So there's a bunch of different ways, including a half a dozen or so third-party tools for all running runners. So I thought, well, that kind of deserves its own course, because that could easily be hours of content. And then continuous deployment. So managing Terraform, Ansible, Kubernetes, the GitHub deployments themselves, Pulumi, like you name it, all the different types of deployment ways, Vercel, Fastly, like there's just so many different ways you could deploy from GitHub Actions. And I felt like a majority of that could easily be 3-5 hours of content. So we're going to break this out. But the second one is probably the one I'm the most excited about. So after this GitHub Actions, sort of the basics of all the different functionality, I'm going to go to this continuous. Notice how I'm calling it continuous AI. Continuous AI. Continuous AI and GitHub Actions. So I've been spending a lot of my spare time testing and trying the various AI workflows, the Gemini, the Claude Code, the built-in ones. And so I've got a bunch of topics here that will turn into the second course. So the idea here is that I can sell these cheaper because they're smaller courses. I can ship them faster because they're smaller courses. And so if you're interested in any of that stuff, that is why you need to come over here. And you jump on the wait list. So if you jump on the wait list, then when each one of those launches, you'll get an email. You're also going to get a couple of emails from me as I release some free stuff or some samples or maybe some of the clips from this show where I talk about some of these things. But yeah, that's kind of the plan, is to start with just the basics. And we're going to release them all on this website, courses.bretfisher.com. So they may, people often ask me, will these courses be launched on Udemy? On day one, they will not be on Udemy, but we are working on a plan with Udemy on how to make them available on that platform, mostly so that those that have access to Udemy Business subscriptions, which a lot of you maybe do if you work at IBM or eBay, I think Tesla, there's 1,000 more companies that all have access to the best courses on Udemy. And I want to figure out how to serve that audience and get them those courses so that they can watch them. And so we're working with Udemy on that. So eventually, but not on day one. I think we're going to launch on our platform first and then figure out the Udemy thing later. One of the goals is that we don't undercut our own pricing, right? So I don't want to sell it. Let's say I don't want to sell it for $49 on my site, and then Udemy has a sale for $9.99, and then everyone feels like they got robbed because the course sales on Udemy are cheaper. One of the challenges with Udemy right now is that their marketplace sales are down year over year in a big way. So a lot of people aren't buying courses on their platform anymore, and I don't know if that's industry-wide. I don't know if that's related to AI. I just can tell you that year over year, sales, I don't know, they're like a quarter of what they were 4 years ago. And not just me. As far as I can tell, all my competition were all selling far less Kubernetes and Docker courses than we once were. So one of the challenges is my business and my income are all based on selling courses and getting sponsors for YouTube videos and stuff like that. So when suddenly all the course sales decline, I can't, there's a point at which it becomes impossible to live on that income. even though I'm selling 50 to 100 a day. It doesn't make enough money for me to have an employee, much less my wife, who's also a full-time employee. So we're still trying to figure that out, and that's where these courses are coming from. Is we needed to launch more courses. We hadn't launched a course in years, and I'm very excited about the future for GitHub Actions and how AI is going to affect all of our automation. So I wanted to figure out a place to launch those. And for years, all my friends have been telling me, you should put your courses on your own website. Why aren't you self-hosting your own courses? And I wasn't, like a dummy. So now we're going to try that. We've done more than just Udemy. We've put stuff on Maven. We tried Podia once, but we ended up not launching on there due to various reasons. But if you have any questions about any of this course stuff, since I'm in the middle of it, this is where you can see like all the things I'm working on here. I've got an endless stream of things I'm working on in content over here. And there's just a lot going on. So it's something that I'm consumed with day and night. The thing I talked about last week, if you weren't here in the live stream last week, I talked about a project that I'm building for the course. Let me see if I have... So there's this one, but that's not the one I want to talk about. Why can't I find it? Maybe I've stored it somewhere else. This is the problem with having all these spaces and all these bookmarks, all these pen tabs. It's I can't find anything. All right, so it's so no, that's not there. So last week I was working on this project called Release Pod. It's something that we're going to be using in the courses because in the beginning of the courses, you kind of need to just learn the real basics, the 101 stuff. And instead of getting too fancy, because in the GitHub Action first course, you're going to be creating an organization. You're going to be creating lots of repos. You're going to be using all sorts of GitHub Action features that go across repo. And that's much more like a real world organization would. And that's what I want this course to be, is real world, not just contrived documentation videos, because we don't really, we have AI now. We don't really need someone to make a video about documentation. The AI can explain and summarize it to us, I think, much better. The videos might be more entertaining, but often I can save a lot of time by just doing that. So I'm not making a video. I'm trying to not make videos that are just giving you feature by feature of the documentation, because I don't think we really need that as much as we need someone to put the pieces of the puzzle together and explain how they all fit together and why they exist, and then give you the best practices around each one of those features and the nuances of what you should and shouldn't do. And also, we don't need every feature explained because a lot of features are just rarely used. I mean, I've worked in small and large organizations with GitHub Actions, and there's some features that still I've never used. So I maybe don't want to teach those unless maybe they're for the certification prep. But I want to give to you just the stuff you need to be useful. That it's like the 80-20 rule. The 80% of the 20% of the features that 80% of the people use, right? Or whatever that 80-20 rule analogy works there. So this one is called Release Pod, and it's an actual functioning app that is not a web server app that you would deploy per se. It's a single binary Golang project that you give it a list of projects on GitHub that you like, and it will summarize their latest releases. And then each time you run it, they will check for any new releases And you can even tell it, I only want minor versions and major versions. I don't want patch versions. So to keep track of all that, and it will then tell you what has changed, or what's the biggest, most important changes, and it will do it in audio. So it will summarize and then create a TTS LLM so that it creates basically a podcast. So hence release pod. So at the end of it, what you end up with is a series of MP3s. So each time you run it, it will check for any new releases, and if there are any, it will end up creating a summary in an MP3 along with an RSS file that you can feed into a podcast player so that you can then listen on the go to your projects that you care about on GitHub and have a nice, hopefully accurate and not stupid AI summary of what's important with that release. Okay? So that's what this does. And it's like 80% done. And it's not even that big. So the reason that I've created this is that we're going to use this to first learn some basics around things like GitHub releases and how those work, how you create releases with GitHub Actions, how do you create GitHub page websites with Actions, how do you build, test, lint, all those sorts of things. And so I've got this plus another repo that are going to be something useful that you can use to do all that. Then once you have that basic knowledge of all the features that are the most popular first features you should be learning, that's when we're going to step back and we're going to say, okay, that's how GitHub Actions works in a nutshell. And you understand the basic flow of them. You understand jobs. You understand workflows. You understand runners. And you've got all that figured out. Now let's create our enterprise organization and create all the standard repos that we might have in a big GitHub organization. Or, you're going to have a .github repo that has your templates in it. You're going to probably have a reusable workflows repo where you store all your reusable workflows across the entire organization so you don't have to repeat yourself. And then you're going to want to use those templates in your other repos. And you're going to have workflows that you set up in the organization as required. Maybe you have a CVE scan on any repo that has a Docker file. It has to have a CVE scan before that image is shipped, right? So then you're going to enforce that across the organization as a policy. These are all things that we all, as DevOps people, we get told to do by our management, and we have to figure out how to do it. So that's going to be all in that first course. We'll touch a little bit on GitHub models, a little bit on some basics of AI, because I think that's just necessary nowadays. But the bulk of the AI stuff, and if you go and you look at github.com/marketplace, you will then find, we actually have under actions, we have all the actions. There's probably 30,000 in there. There's so many actions in there now, they've taken away the number. So, like you can go to page 500. So 500 times 20. So 10,000. It's got to be more than that. Maybe it just tops out if I go to page 500. Well, there is no next. So yeah, we don't know how many there are. Last count, it was tens of thousands. But in there, they have a new subcategory called AI assisted. And I love that because that really narrows it down. And look how many there are. 35 pages, 20 each page. So not quite 1,000, but we've got many hundreds of actions, of which probably none of you will ever use. My experience is we don't even use, even in a big organization, we barely use 1% or less of all actions out there. And I tend to try to focus on ones by verified creators first, so I will filter this. And so that means I only get the blue checkbox, which are companies that are been verified by GitHub as the actual company and that they're official. So like Docker would have a box here. Anything with Anthropic is going to have the box here. OpenAI would have the box here. Google's going to have the box here. So now I can see all the official ones. And as you can see, we can use the Gemini CLI, or we can use Claude Code, or we can use the one that's agnostic, that you can use any model that GitHub hosts. You can use the GitHub-based one here. I just happen to know this one's GitHub because it has that generic logo. So it doesn't. I wish it said the organization. It doesn't say that on them. You have to click into it to see it. But CodeBall, which I don't know what that is, but it's evidently very popular because these are sorted by popularity. You have some Microsoft ones in here, like GPT Review. You can see though, like a lot of my friends that use the Claude Code is the most popular. So if you're not, this is an interesting sort of split, because if you're running on GitHub, like most of us are, as your CI, then at some point you have to make a choice of which ecosystem of LLM tooling am I going to use in my automation. Now, just like we all have multi-cloud today, you could do multi-agent or multi-LLM, but most of us are not there yet. Like most of us are still just trying to understand and learn a single tool, much less understanding the nuances of how Gemini is different from Claude Code and using each one for its best parts. Like that's a lot of work, and I don't know anybody who knows them all that well. So I'm a Warp guy locally. I have friends who are Claude Code people locally. I have others that are Cursor people locally. And none of us really know the other tools as well as we know our primary. So we all share back and forth like the things we're doing so that we can all try to keep up with each other. But Claude Code here is the most popular, and presumably because it's the most popular locally, teams that are using Claude Code on their machines locally would want to use that same workflow and experience in CI. If you are paying for GitHub, however, you get certain things with your GitHub account, including access to some LLMs. And if you pay for Copilot inside of VS Code, you get a whole lot of this stuff out of the box for free. So, for example, this Claude Code action has all these wonderful features. You can do code reviews with it. You can do PR, issue management. It's just a lot, right? A lot of functionality in there. But if you're someone who's paying for Copilot, and GitHub has been nice enough to give me Copilot for free, so I have access to the basic version of Copilot. I think it's called Copilot Pro. So I can go in and, for example, I can go into an issue. I don't have any issues, but I can go into a pull request and I can assign a reviewer. Ooh. Oh, is it because it's private? I wonder why I don't see. This is actually a good test. For some reason, okay, models are enabled. Copilot. Use custom instruction. Yep, it's on. Firewall's enabled. Recommended allow. Yeah. So why? I wonder if it's because it's a private repo, and maybe I'm not paying for something. But I can set up automatic code review. It's a feature built in. And then I can go over here to the models, and I can play in my code inside here using the GitHub models. So what I'm seeing is, because teams are paying for Claude Code, they're inherently going to want to use that in GitHub, but they might also be paying, their organization might also be paying for certain GitHub things like Copilot that give them a lot of this stuff built out of the box for free. The one competitive advantage GitHub is going to have here is, let me get off of this repo and go to something that's actually, let me go to this one. This is a public repo. So if I go to an issue, I don't have an issue. Do I have any pull requests? I don't have any pull. Okay, I got to go to a different one. I always have something. Yeah, I was gonna say in this repo I always have something open. So let's see. So this one. So I got this little button. I can't quite see it. I got this little button on the side here. I can code with agent mode. So I could just give this to an AI to develop, and it'll go and possibly create a, well, it will create a PR. I could, so that's a feature of GitHub Copilot. If you're paying for it, you can do that. And it's built right into the UI. And that's one of the challenges if you're choosing to use Claude Code or Gemini or any of the other ones that aren't GitHub Copilot, you don't get the advantage of using built-in features. Although I wouldn't be surprised if in here I could assign this to something else. Like I wouldn't have this feature, but I could maybe assign it to Claude Code, and maybe the Claude Code. I'm not actually sure because since I've been focused on all these built-in features, I haven't played with Claude Code in GitHub yet. But over on a pull request, I can assign. See, it's still not. I don't know why I don't have Copilot as a reviewer here. Well, maybe that's a bad example because it's a. These are all dependencies. But if I go into settings under models, yeah, it's all enabled. I don't know why I don't see it. This is only available if you're on the Copilot Pro or the Pro Plus plan, which I am on the Pro. See, I don't want to enforce it. Request pull, request review from Copilot. I don't want to force, I just want to optionally. Yeah, it's confusing. I don't. Let's see if ChatGPT can help. How can I assign GitHub Copilot to review a PR in the web UI? Okay. You don't assign Copilot as a reviewer. Instead, you mention it. Well, then that's no different than Claude Code. Or you can click the Copilot button in the PR Conversation tab. Copilot button. Or you can click the Copilot button in the PR Conversation tab. This is maybe a bad example because it's a dependabot. Oh, okay. So there. It's wild. So what does that do? I assigned Copilot. what is Copilot going to do? Is it going to review? Is it going to do anything? Delegates issues to Copilot so you can focus on the creative, complex, and high-impact work that matters most. All right, so that maybe doesn't do anything in a PR. Oh, it's just called Copilot. Okay, so ChatGPT is already wrong. Let me just see what happens there. Nothing is happening. All right, do I have issues? All right, I'm going to assign this code with agent mode. That's not what I expected. Oh, that's not what I expected. I don't really want to do that. All right, agent mode. Start a code space with Copilot agent mode for this issue in another repository. Why would I ever do that? All right, I'm going to assign it to Copilot. And in theory, okay, so there we go. Now Copilot's looking at it. Of course, it can't, yeah. All right, so now it's created an issue. So this is what I expect. So the fact that it's creating a PR, it's working on that. So I guess if I was using Claude Code, my assumption is I would just have a Claude Code pair programmer here. So I guess that's not that much different. Yeah, I need to add Copilot to reviewer. Yeah, that's the problem is I didn't see over on this, well, let's see, on this one, it's assigned, but it's not a reviewer. And I can't choose it as a reviewer. So I don't know how you're seeing it, but I don't see it as a reviewer. If I type it, yeah, nothing shows up. So now supposedly there's a setting under rules. I can force enforcement. It will not be enforced. All branches. And I don't see. Didn't it walk me through how to do that? Require a pull request before merging. Require a pull request review from Copilot. Require automatically request Copilot code review. This actually seems risky because if this is a public repo, anyone can put any code they want in, and they can prompt inject anything they want to this. So my guess is Yeah, this seems. I'm surprised that this isn't warning me that it's a public repo and that it's going to automatically run AI on every PR. Because if you weren't around a couple of weeks ago, we talked about how easy it is to use to prompt inject in public repos with a GitHub, and that seems like someone's got to explain to me how that is not a problem. Like maybe the GitHub Access token is locked down so that there's no secrets. Maybe it prevents access to secrets. I would need to read up on that before I would want to enable that for the whole repo by default. This repository doesn't have Copilot instructions. With Copilot instructions, I can understand the repository better and work faster. I can generate a Copilot instructions for you. Nah, we're just playing. I don't think I need that yet. Anyway, so yeah, so that's a lot of what I've been trying to figure out and learn is how all these things relate from github.com to my VS Code locally to my CLI and how all the different ways that AI interconnects, because there's they're on a fast and furious release pace. So that's it's a lot of stuff. All right. Siri. Hello. Go to Copilot in general. Yeah, that's just taking me to the thing I was just in. Yeah, there's nothing there that would make it show up anywhere else. At least as far as I could tell, it's got an on and off for the custom settings, but all this is enabled for the custom coding agent, which is the default. So yeah, still not able to be reviewed unless I make a rule, which I don't want to do because I don't want every single PR that anyone might give me through a fork to be automatically reviewed by Copilot. I actually don't know. That's a good question. Okay, so what minutes on a public repo would a Copilot use? Would it use my tokens and my limits? Or would it use the tokens and limits of the forked pull request owner? I don't actually know. Yeah. Unfortunately, that's already enabled. It's enabled by default everywhere for all my repos. So if I go to code review, the custom instructions are this file, but I don't think that's necessary for it to do what it needs to do. It just helps. It helps it, which I have that in a couple of repos that I actively use VS Code Copilot on. I have the custom instructions file there. So yeah, I don't know. All right. My user settings. All right, Chris, I'll check that out. I'm going to go to my Copilot, see what it says here. Copilot is pros active on your account. Let's just help. I was going to say, I believe that everything in here is enabled. These are just different models. Ooh, Copilot code review disabled. Use Copilot to review your code and generate pull request summaries. But that's locked. And I don't know how to enable that. Yeah. Let's see, if I go to an org, let's switch settings to, let's see. Yeah, this is going to be the problem, is I don't want to have to pay for Copilot for an organization. But in order to do that, it's going to say, yeah, upgrade. Yeah, $19 per user. So I have to pay for every one of my organizations. I have to pay for Copilot twice, or 3 times, or 5 times. I have to pay for it for my personal account, repos, and then for each org. Yeah, so it looks like I'd have to pay $19 to see see the features, that whether or not they're enabled in the org itself. But yeah, I wonder why. I wonder why that's disabled. It's the only one disabled in this entire list. Let's see if ChatGPT, why is Copilot code review disabled in my personal GitHub settings? Oh, it says here. All right, so Chris is saying his is also disabled. ChatGPT is guessing for me. It says, it sounds like you're seeing the Copilot code review. It sounds like you're seeing the Copilot code review feature in your personal GitHub settings set to disabled, and there's no option to change it. This typically occurs because your account is part of an organization or enterprise that controls Copilot related settings. If you're assigned a Copilot seat via an organization like Copilot Business or Enterprise, your personal account inherits that organization's settings. That means you cannot override that setting in your own account. If your account is under an organization managed license, specific settings like code review control may be grayed out or unchangeable. But how? How do I know what organization that would be? It doesn't say which org. And I'm part of a lot of orgs. I'm in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 orgs. Yeah, that's a mystery. I wonder if that is... I wonder if I have to pay more. I know that there's... Copilot usage. Oh man, it's so confusing. You are on Copilot. Usage. Yeah, I can't tell. It is a mystery. You left all the orgs except the ones I own. Well, that's a good test. I wasn't going to do that. That sounded like too much work to add myself back. Yeah. Okay. Well, it's good to know that no matter what you do, it seems to be disabled. Chris, do you pay for Copilot Pro? Because I don't actually pay for it. GitHub granted me access, and I wondered if that was related. Because since I'm not paying for it, maybe there's a feature or two. Plans for GitHub Copilot. Free Pro, Pro Plus. Copilot, okay, so okay, so Copilot Coding Agent public preview, which we know because we just gave it work, so we know that works because I'm on this one, I believe, the Copilot Pro. It doesn't actually say which plan I'm on. It just says I can use it for free. So they all get agent mode. They don't all get, you have to pay for something before you get coding agent. Copilot code review, only review section in VS Code. So I should be able to get it here. Code review. Copilot extensions. Oh, maybe this is why I don't see Claude in my model list. Oh, well, this is in... See, this is part of what's confusing is like models shows up in a lot of places. It shows up in VS Code. It shows up in marketplace models. It shows up in repo models. You can access it through the API. And I noticed that I don't see anything Claude in the repo mode. And so I don't know why that is. Code completion. Organization custom instructions. Okay, so you can set organization-wide instructions. That's cool. But I wouldn't be able to do that since I'm not on business or enterprise. Coding guidelines for coding review. Huh. Well, it's a mystery. It says you're on Copilot Pro. Yeah, it says for me, It says for me under billing. Licensing. GitHub Copilot, you're AI pair programmer. You are eligible to use GitHub Copilot for free. It doesn't tell me whether it's Pro or Pro Plus. I presume it's because I got a lot of public templates and repos that are popular. I guess that's why I'm not a GitHub star or whatever they call their ambassador program, so I'm not sure why they gave it to me. But I get an email every month that says, you still have access to Copilot. So, yeah, that's a mystery. What I'm probably going to have to do for the courses, especially for the AI course, is I'm probably going to have to pay for it on my business, on a organization, so I can see all the different options and I can give people the demos. But that's maybe why, I mean, all of that complexity, all of those features, that is a lot. They've just made it very complex. It feels very unnecessarily complex. And maybe that's why people just go for this. Because if you have, as far as I know, this is just using a token limit and a rate limit. And that's all you have to worry about with Claude Code. So you just set this up. You would use the latest version. And you just, that 2-liner. And then, let's see, upgrading from 0, migration guides. Now, what I'm interested in, though, is can I use the Claude Code with the GitHub model rather than having to have a Claude account, but having an Anthropic account? Can I just use this with my GitHub models that I already pay for? It supports multiple authentication methods, including Anthropic Direct API, Amazon Bedrock, and Google Vertex AI. But it doesn't say it doesn't say GitHub models here. So maybe it can't be used with because if you're using GitHub Models API, which I've done a little bit of over the last week. You have to use your GitHub PAT rather than like an Anthropic API key because it's hosted on GitHub. And then in my in my release pod, you can see in the code, summarize, I think. You can see in the code here that this is the quickest way I know how to get the API URL. So in one of my apps, this release pod app, I've built it so that it tries to support various models or various APIs. So this is if you're using GitHub, you use models.github.ai/inference chat completion. So it's a little bit different than all the other URL formats. And then when you access it, you have to specify the model in publisher/model format. So it's a little bit different of a API access, but you can use the GitHub models, all those various models. You can use them remotely with your own code. And one of the reasons that they call this is they call it prototyping. So they give you, it's a pretty limited API. For example, with the models I'm using, I think I'm using like GPT-5. when I'm using it remote, I can only send one request a minute. That's crazy. That's crazy. They have somewhere they have. So if you can buy models, you can actually go in to your settings and you can say, don't just use my included AI model limits. Give me bill me per token in all the various ways like Anthropic and OpenAI do. And if you enable that setting, which I have not enabled in my billing, but if you enable that, then suddenly, and I don't have the rate limits. I don't think they're on this page. There we go. Yeah, they are. That you go, so I'm on the Copilot Pro, which is very similar to Copilot Free in terms of rate limits. But the rate limits are hugely steep. And if we look at, I'm looking at GPT-5, so you can't even use GPT-5 for free, understandably. But it's only one request per minute if I'm using the free or sort of the included token limits. It's also limited to 4,000 tokens per request, which is pretty small. It's not really usable. It's really only for very, very limited prototyping, which is what this whole page is about. So I've been learning how to live within these limits so that I can, this is basically me learning all the different models and the different, it took me a while to figure out, how do I even know what a model is? How do I know that it's low or high, or if it follows if it follows one of these different rate limit settings? And I learned that you can do that through if I go up here to models, I think I can see it in here. Yeah, so if I choose, see, you currently have free rate limits. Enable models paid usage to avoid interruptions. So if I go to the playground and I choose, so if I choose this model, this was an interesting thing. I didn't understand how to understand my rate limits per model, which ones are low, which ones are high, which ones are custom. And I learned that if I go into this is the only way I know how to do it. There's maybe an API that I can get it from, but I figured out that if I go here, I select the model, and then down here under the free rate limit tier, it's considered custom. And then I was like, okay, well, what is custom? And custom is any of these, any of these that aren't high, low, or embedding. Those are the three sort of generic rate limit settings, and then all these other ones down here are like per model. So you can look at Grok limits, you can look at DeepSeek limits. I'm using GPT-5 here, so it's going to be, so it's a custom. But if I go and I play around, and I literally have to sit here and I can't filter, which, this is all kind of super annoying. But if I pick 5.4, okay, it's free rate limit tier low. So that's pretty cool. Now, this is not a great model. I'm not sure why I would ever use this. Maybe if I was on the edge and I was doing temperature reading and had to interpret some values with a model locally, I could use Pi4. I don't know if you say phi. I think it's phi, not pi. Phi for. But if I go over to the low, if we go back, oh, that's the wrong one. Okay, so if we go up to low, here's the cool thing. Anyone with a GitHub account can do this. So this, actually, I thought this was pretty neat. Anyone with a free, because anyone can have a Copilot free as long as they have a GitHub account, they get Copilot free, which means they can do 15 requests per minute, 5 at a time, which, man, that would really burn through your 150 requests per day. But that's there completely free for those low models, and it's not much worse for the high models. The trick is figuring out which model is low and high, and then deciding if that's the model you really want to use. So if I go back to an old, let's see if I can find an old O1 maybe, O1 mini. Nope, see, it's custom. 401 Nano. Okay, so 401 Nano is on the low tier. So I can use that for free. I thought that was pretty nice, even with the API. So I could technically sit on my machine, write an app, give it the OpenAI API, experience, give it that specific URL, and then my GitHub PAT, my token, and I could use GPT-4o Nano 150 times a day. I just think that is cool. I don't think most people know that exists, that if they have a free GitHub account, that they can use some of these lesser models for free through the API, because I don't know how true that is with OpenAI itself. Yeah, I've used the GitHub MCP. Mm-hmm. Let's log a support ticket, Chris. I like it. Are you doing it or me? Yeah, they comped Chris as well. Right, that's exactly the same question I had, Chris, because I was like, if I want to go for Pro Plus, do I now have to pay for the whole thing? And how do I opt out of the free and get to the Pro? Yeah, I had the same question. So, Chris, if you figure that all out, I would love to know, because I'm probably going to need to experiment with the different levels. I was actually thinking about just creating a new account, a new fresh account, and then just buying all that stuff temporarily so I could understand the different levels and the different benefits firsthand. But yeah, it's weird, right? Like, I don't know if I have access to Pro or Pro Plus technically, because I think the email I get, I don't know that it specifies. So, but I do think this is like not well understood and is also cool. So I'm definitely going to need. I'm probably going to need to create a free user that I don't pay for anything, just to show off the free usage. So when I was making my release pod app, we had to put in, I think I have some code in here that basically says if you choose the GitHub models, and let's see, I'm not sure if I've actually pushed this change yet. Yeah, so I've had to put in a rate limiter into the settings of this app, because, okay, so one of the goals for this release pod app is that it can be run as a GitHub action, so that you don't need some other thing. You don't need, the whole goal of this is like create the output is either in the form of Markdown or in the form of an audio file. So right now, GitHub Models does not have a TTS model that's text to speech. So I can't create an audio file for free or using any of the GitHub models. So I have to sign up for either 11 Labs or OpenAI. Since I already pay for OpenAI, I'm using their GPT-4. I'm not sure which. It's a GPT-3 or GPT-4 TTS model, and it's fine. It turns things into audio. It's mostly fine. It's not the best, but I didn't want to go down the rabbit hole of learning 11 Labs yet. So my goal is that you could fork this app or this repo, and you could then fill out your own template settings with your own repos. This would be where you'd put your repos list in the settings file, and that's all you would need to do. Well, you would go down and you would specify your LLM model. This is actually wrong. I would want this to default to GitHub. But my goal is that it could actually be used within the free limits of the GitHub models, so that anyone could create a repo that, and this is a theory, there's a lot of steps to jump through, but the goal is it's a GitHub action. Is it a GitHub action or is it a repo? I think it has to be a repo that will run itself through the GitHub action, and it will lay down the Markdown and the MP3 files to GitHub Pages as a part of that action. It will run the command to generate the Markdown and optionally the MP3, and it will use those as artifacts, upload them to GitHub Pages. And if it can use the free model for the Markdown version, what that means is you could set up the cron job in GitHub Actions, and for free, with a free GitHub account, you could have a summarization AI checking once a week, once a month, whatever, all your favorite repos. You could have 30 of them in here, and it would rate limit properly so that it would only try once per minute to summarize, because that would be the free rate limit on the, a GPT-4.1 model or something like that. So I had to put in these specific things for GitHub to ensure that I don't hit rate limits, and tokens as well, because there's a really low token limit. So one of the challenges is, like, I wanted to summarize one of the cloud native projects, and it was Argo CD, and Argo CD's release notes are insane because they list every single fix. And so when they had a minor version release recently, a 3.1 release, it was probably 20,000 tokens in their release notes. So there's no way I could fit it all in there. So then I had to do some token estimation. I had to learn all this stuff just to get around the limits. But the goal here is that this will work with the free rate limits of GitHub models, so that you wouldn't have to go buy another LLM API access. But if you want to do the audio summarization, you will have to do, the $20 OpenAI, because I don't think on OpenAI the TTS model, it doesn't have a free. So there is no free plan. So, and I don't think they have. I looked through all. They only have like 3 or 4 TTS models. I looked through all of them. None of them are free. Yeah, free, not supported. So we're kind of forced for any text to audio to have to pay. Now, 11 Labs, which I have not used yet. Oh, look at that. I've already searched this before. Credit system for free monthly credits. Yeah, so free. So yeah, free limits. Using the Python library. It doesn't say how many. Let's see. Okay, 10,000 credits a month. I don't know what credits is. 10 credits usable for either 10 minutes. Okay, so on the free plan, I can get 20 minutes a month of decent quality audio. That's 128, 44. That's great. That's great. We don't need anything higher than that. All right, so maybe what I could do is set it up by default to use 11 Labs. So then the only work you need to do is go sign up for a free 11 Labs account. So the goal is a free podcast custom made for you of all your favorite GitHub project releases. You don't have to pay any money. All you have to do is fork a repo and go. And there'll be 3 steps. And I kind of wanted to use that. I wanted to build that. So I probably need to build it now for 11 Labs, because I was not building it specifically for 11 Labs API. So I'm pretty sure it's not going to work without some changes. So for example, the audio file isn't very complicated, but it's sending it off it's hard coded to the OpenAI API. So I had as a future feature to change all this up to talk to the 11 Labs API, because I'm guessing that it's not. None of these APIs are exactly the same. So I'm probably going to have to create a new function for that. Anyway, And I don't know why I have this closed source. I need to open this project up. Why is it still? That's a good hack to play around with the models. Yeah, and I don't think people know about it. Like, and I didn't even hit the limits on it till weeks into playing with it. I didn't even realize that there was a token limit until I got that giant release note from the Argo project. And I didn't know that there was a rate limit until I tried to automate some testing, because I wasn't like running the command every 60 seconds. So I'd never hit that 1 per minute limit until this week. And so then I had to go looking up all the limits and trying to understand, well, what model do I have for what limits? So I think what I want to do is on the defaults of this, inside this template, my defaults are going to be, I'll have the default to set up to use that low model, which is going to give you some crappy results. I've actually been disappointed with the summarization functionality of some of the cheaper models. So I might have like 3 or 4 model options here, but default to the free one. And maybe we can default to high, because high is still, yeah, see, like none of the custom ones you can use. Well, actually, you can use DeepSeek. Only 8 requests per day. Grok 3. So maybe we do Grok or DeepSeek. So here's the problem. It's like I wanted to look up these, the high ones, but I'm having a hard time finding a high model. Like it's pretty tedious to manually go through that UI, picking each model. And like just going through them one after the other, literally low, low, low. Okay, high. 4.0 is high. Let's see. No, that's just generic rate limits for the API. REST API endpoint, no, billing. And we've already been here, and we know that it's not listed there. Let's see, maybe I can say list GitHub models through the GitHub API. REST API endpoints for model catalog. Now we're talking. Hell, maybe I can get it with the GitHub. No, it doesn't give me an example. Okay. List all models. Get a list of all models available for use, including details like supported input, publisher, and rate limits. Okay. Okay, limits. Okay, rate limit tier. All right. I'm surprised this isn't in the CLI. GH Copilot. Yeah, that's just for accessing Copilot from the CLI. Repo, GH repo. Yeah, there's nothing. It doesn't seem like there's anything to access models directly to the GitHub CLI. All right, so I'm going to play with that. See if I might create a little quick utility that can output all models for the free tier. Because what I kind of want to do is make it easier for people to figure out what model they can use for free. So I'd rather have just inside this repo. And so this repo, I just need to build a function that will call and filter based on like rate limit high. Because I think high is good. I don't think we're going to hit the limits of high. You're not going to be running this tool, except for when you're playing with it initially. You're not going to be running this tool every day. You're maybe run it once a week, maybe once a month to make your podcast. So, supported output modalities. So they're setting it up there in case we maybe someday get audio output. That would be awesome. So then I wouldn't have to use anything but GitHub models. Is there anything else about GitHub models catalog? Oh, that's literally it. That's the entire page. All right, so we have uncommitted changes. But this isn't related to that, so we're going to call this models list. Models list. Access the GitHub API and give a next, we'll want to add options for free. Let's see, free. Is it free? Rate limit tier. For tier high, low, high, or custom which will filter based on the I'm assuming that's an input value. Oh, which should filter based on the in the JSON response. Please read as all right, we're going to see how that does that. All right. Been streaming for almost 3 hours. So I'm going to wrap this up. Thanks for hanging out with me. I'm still trying to do more of this, of streaming my work on the course. And then I'm also hoping that at some point I can start giving you all access to the course even before it's done. So the way to do that is to go up there and sign up for the free waitlist, and I won't bug the crap out of you. I will just let you know a couple times as things progress, and then we'll give you a coupon to the course once it launches. And we're planning on giving some people access to it early, so they'll be able to buy it before it's finished and then provide feedback for a discount. That's in our plan. I don't know when that will happen. But first, we're going to release that pro course for GitHub Actions, then the AI course for GitHub Actions, and then we'll see after that how the other courses go. But that's the plan. And I appreciate you all being here. Keith, Chris, Kumar, anyone else who's still hanging around. Thanks for being here. And hopefully Nirmal will be back in the next week or two for another show. Maybe we'll cover some cloud native and AI news of stuff we've been working on and things we've been seeing. And we'll get another podcast episode out and all that fun stuff. All right, thanks for watching. I'll see you on the next live stream.